Well, the Ohio State Buckeyes just fall to the Oregon Ducks, 32-31. We give an instant and immediate reaction to one of the best games of college football to this point in the season on this episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness, is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. Anthony Moeglin here with you with an instant and immediate reaction to what we just watched. We're watching it live here. The Oregon Ducks take down the Ohio State Buckeyes 32-31 in what is an instant classic, one of the best games in college football to this point in the season. And oh my gosh, this game had just about everything in it. We'll dive into a lot of it here, and you're going to see stuff from stats and conversation to maybe some post-game quotes and whatnot here as it all comes through. But as we stand right now, the Oregon Ducks looks like student section and the whole entire school is on the field after Will Howard takes a slide as the Buckeyes had driven all the way down the field. This episode here, want to be as interactive as possible. Obviously, I'm riding solo on my side here, so jump in the comments section. Let me hear what you had to thought from the good. I thought Will Howard was fantastic tonight outside of that final play. And from the bad, I thought Denzel Burke took a massive step back. First time we've seen some actual live competition that is kind of up to par with the Buckeyes. And I thought he got cooked a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. So drop your thoughts in the comments section, and we'll get to it all. But the Ohio State Buckeyes fall 32-31, and I think the best place to start is what does this mean for Ryan Day? I think that as we all know, Ryan Day's kind of story to this point is he dominates everybody in the Big Ten outside of the team up north. And any time that people or that teams kind of match Ohio State in terms of ability, it seems that Ohio State is oftentimes ill-prepared, or they just come out on the wrong side of it. And I think that if you drop back to the first half of this game, I thought Ohio State came out potentially not a little flat. They go right down the field on their first possession for 6. But they just didn't really respond well. That first drive was aided by, if we remember back, the interception that was not called in Ohio State. Not luckily, that's a prep thing. They sped up to the ball and quick snapped it, so no review was possible. But that first touchdown drive was aided certainly by that call there. They go right down the field, and then the very next play on offense is the Quinshon Judkins fumble. On everything we've kind of talked about, the interior offensive line kind of gets dominated on that play. The defensive tackle makes a really nice play for a tackle for a loss, and beyond going for a TFL, he rips that ball out of Quinshon's hands, setting up first and goal for the Ducks, and the Ducks go forward and score. So I think that for Ohio State, it's like, man, they looked really good. There was a lot of good things that happened on this tape, and that we'll see. But there was also a lot to be desired. And we'll jump here to the kind of the next point. I think we can get back to the beginning of the game in a little bit. But Pedro, appreciate you jumping in, and everybody appreciate you all jumping in. The ending was unacceptable. Kind of down the middle in this type of stuff. Playing quarterback is really hard. I've done it at a very small level, never at the level of Will Howard or the level of the Ohio State Buckeyes, but playing quarterback is really, really, really challenging. And for Ohio State, think back to the start of that drive. We dropped back to pass, and I think Will potentially was like kind of rolling out left or scrambling a little left, and he actually slips and falls. setting up a 2nd and 19, and he immediately responds. They go right to Jeremiah and get 10 back, and then go bang right to Emeka, get the first down, and now you're rolling. And now they put together a nice little drive. Who do you go to next? You go again to Jeremiah. You go back to Emeka. All of a sudden, you're on the you're past the 50-yard line, and you are setting yourself up for a realistic chance at getting a kick, a game-winning kick. And then, you get the OPI. That's a tough one. I think by letter of the law, it is OPI. It's one of those things that's, we used to call it when we played, a weight room issue, where Jeremiah kind of just gets that extended shove, gets that little bit of a shove there. The cornerback is, 6 inches smaller and probably 80 pounds lighter. He flies off of him like a fly, and Jeremiah gets that OPI. Now, what I will say is, the 12-man on the field situation, I think that actually worked out in the favor of Oregon, because they actually play that play. There's no it wasn't like a loss of down situation, or you didn't get the time back. So they play the 3rd and 25 with 12 guys on the field. They get a PBU, but in that same time frame, they run off 8 seconds. If you're Oregon, you're like, holy cow, yeah, I'll trade 8 seconds for 5 yards for sure. That sets up 3rd and 20 with just 6 seconds remaining. And we kind of see the end there, and it's like really, really tough. If you're Ohio State, you have that one timeout left, and you're like, hey, Will, just let's if we can use our pass to get positive and get into field goal range, awesome. If not, use your legs, but get down. Like, that's one where you got to get down right away. He didn't. He extended for just a little bit, because once he gets down, that timeout's out, right? And if there's just even a tick on the clock, you can get that timeout in and get your field goal unit on to potentially kick the game winner. He goes and extended a couple of yards, slides down, and unfortunately, the clock expired. So, Pedro, I go both ways here. Yes, I agree, unacceptable, and it's a tough loss for us Buckeye fans, but really challenging situation, really challenging play. What I will say is, thanks to the 12-team playoff situation and kind of the new college football, the silver lining to all of this is that in the past, we'd be sitting here, kind of SOL, right? Season over, and really kind of looking for answers. But instead, with the new playoff format, Ohio State's season stays alive. We're in okay shape. And truth be told, this is going to be one of those all-time instant classic type of games. And yes, Travis, appreciate the comment in here. Just kind of what I was saying. We could see this team 2 more times. You could see this team in the Big Ten championship game and in the playoff for sure. And it's really good. Sometimes getting a loss like this, I shouldn't say it's really good. Sometimes a loss like this, at least early on in the season, can be decently positive to kind of refocus on some of the small things, refocus on a lot of the fundamentals, get really back into it, and make sure you're kind of doing all the right things. So you get that one loss out of the way. Now, the other side to that one, Travis, and everybody else, is like your room for error is now 0. There's no more room to switch up to slip up, especially with the schedule that's kind of coming down the pipe. You got Nebraska coming to town next week after a well-deserved and much-needed bye week coming up for the Buckeyes. Then you get Nebraska at the end of October, and then you have the next marquee matchup between yourself and the Penn State Nittany Lions in that first weekend in November the 2nd. So that's all coming down the way. The good part is you got a chance you'll stay in the top 10. We'll get into a little top 10 discussion here in a little bit. I think you drop probably to 5, maybe 4, maybe 5, but you're definitely in the top 10. You're probably staying within the top 5. So I think we talked a little Will Howard, but I think as we talk a little bit negatively about him, we got to give him kind of his flowers here. 28 of 35, 326 yards. That's 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And really, from what I can remember, just off of just watch the game and kind of thinking back, only one throw was really in danger, I'd say. And it was like a little outcut to Jeremiah Smith. In the backfield, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins go 10 carries and 11 carries, respectively. Travion goes for 87 yards with a long of 53. Now, here's where we're going to take some time to kind of discuss what we saw today, because Quinshon Judkins goes 11 carries for 23 yards, averaging just 2 yards a carry. Will Howard, on the other hand, 9 carries for 13 yards, averaging just over 1 yard a pop. Quinshon and Will both found pay dirt, scoring touchdowns. So the problem I see here is you go 33 carries for 141 yards, and you let's take away the one outlier. So 141 minus 53. You're doing it live here. This is not a math major, but outside of that long run, you go 32 carries for 88 yards. Now that is well more of an indictment of this Ohio State team than I think that finish was, because this team, and we talked about it in the pregame, this team's really built on running the football. Chip Kelly's offenses are built on running the football. And tonight was really the first time that Ohio State kind of got punched in the mouth. And it was pretty evident up front and in the second level. The Ducks were kind of flying around, making plays in the backfield. They weren't missing tackles. And it's something that, truthfully, like, we aren't used to. We aren't used to seeing. Akron didn't challenge us like that. Western didn't challenge us like that. Marshall didn't challenge us like that. Michigan State didn't challenge us like that. Iowa did for one half. And I was kind of under the impression or expecting that this game was going to feel a lot like that Iowa game did, where, hey, you go into halftime, you're not really feeling too great about things, and then you come out and it was like this avalanche of Buckeyes, right, where it went touchdown, strip sack, and then another touchdown, another, like, all these plays started to happen. Just never happened like that, and that's, frankly, a good team on the other side, and that's really it. But really a massive concern of mine that Ohio State, outside of one run, averaged like 2 yards a pop on the ground. And you're not going to win football games. Hey, guess what? You're not beating Penn State doing that, right? You're going to out-athlete them on the outside. But as we've talked about, if you can't run the football, Ohio State's offense is going to get stuck in neutral. And we really saw it tonight. Out on the outside, Jeremiah Smith. This kid is freaking special, man. Holy cow. He continues to show up. Saw a couple funny tweets, funny posts in the X world tonight. One was a good one from a good friend of ours, guy we do some work with, Spencer German at Spencito on Twitter. Tweeted the I'm not a comic book guy or whatever, but the Avengers Endgame, the big guy at the end with the fist thing, saying he's inevitable. It was like, yeah, Jeremiah Smith, you are inevitable, dude. Like, this guy is a special cat. 9 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. And what was really impressive from him, and feel free to roast me in the chat here in the comments, because I'm not a Marvel guy by any stretch, but and what was really cool about Jeremiah, he was not only just like this big play, like, hey, circus, go make a circus catch. He is now in the, hey, if Ohio State needs one, they go to number 4. Like, if it's a big situation, a big spot, they're going to Jeremiah Smith. And that was pretty evident tonight. Like I said, 9 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. His long was 38 yards. Emeka Egbuka, I mean, I say it every single week. This is like one of my favorite players on the football field and on this Ohio State Buckeyes team. He goes 10 catches for 93 yards and a score. That score was, man, that was a sweet little route, right, where he goes on that outcut, kind of flips his head, gives his eyes to the quarterback, gets the defense to kind of bite on something, and then kind of whips it right up the sidelines there for a nice little touchdown in the red area. I thought he was special tonight again. And again, just like Jeremiah, when the chips are down, they're going to number 4 or number 2. And that's where Will Howard's going to throw the football, and that's where Will Howard is going to trust in his guys. G. Scott, I wish I had my buddy Kevin on tonight. He would have been pumped seeing some of the G. Scott stuff. 3 catches for G for 46 yards, no touchdowns. He would have had a touchdown on that Emeka play. Will decided to go out to number 2 instead of staying up the middle, but still, obviously, it ended the right way. Quinshon, 2 catches for 38 yards. Will Kazmarek, 1 catch for 32 yards. Really nice catch there. Carnell Tate, he's kind of been like that third guy out, kind of the oddball out in that receiver room. 1 catch for 13 yards. Travian Henderson finished with 2 catches for just 4 yards out of the backfield. But I think that, looking at those stats, obviously it's top heavy to number 4, number 2. And it should be that way, right? Like those guys are game changing type talents. Those guys are the guys when, the chips are down, you're going to number 4 or number 2. And I want to take a quick second before flipping over to the defensive conversation, as I know that there's some thoughts there on the defensive side of the football, especially after tonight. But want to go back to Will just real quick. And I talked in the pregame and I was like, hey, for Will, I think tonight is a really big night to just do your job. And I think you saw that very evidently tonight. He wasn't asked to be Superman. And when you just consistently do your job, complete passes down the field, find open guys, big plays do end up happening and drives get put together. Yes, it didn't end the way you wanted it to, but Ohio State fans, outside of that final play where, man, if he just goes down one step shorter, they get that timeout in and you're kicking a game-winning field goal and he's potentially the hero. That's just the nature of being the quarterback. If you're not the hero, you're the villain. But I think that there's a ton of positivity coming from Will Howard specifically and this Ohio State offense. Fix the run game, and then this group will go back to being kind of unstoppable. All right. From the penthouse, I guess maybe close to the penthouse, now to the outhouse. This Ohio State defense got exposed tonight. Let's just call a spade a spade. They've been giving up under 200 yards of total offense a game to this point in the season. And in the first half alone, Dylan Gabriel had thrown for over 200 yards. And I do think, and we'll get into the Gabriel conversation here, but I think he was pretty special tonight. That kid he's very similar to Will on our side, a veteran cat. Guy who's been around, has played in a bunch of big games. We kind of highlighted his career on our Thursday show, but he's a dude that not only has been places, but has been uber successful. At Oklahoma, he threw for 3,000 yards 4 out of his 5 seasons. The one season he didn't, he was injured. So he's a high yardage guy, a high touchdown guy, a very high completion percentage guy. We saw that tonight. He was pretty special. 23 of 34 for 341 yards, 2 scores. The difference on Oregon's side of the ball is they ran the rock. Dylan finished with 4 carries for 32 yards and a score. Obviously, that big score towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter kind of set things apart. But Jordan James, running back Jordan James, wore number 20 of the night. He was kind of their bell cow. 23 carries for 115 yards and a score. And if we're going to be fair and kind of take away his long run, like I talked about with Travion, his long run was just 25 yards. So even there, he goes 22 carries for 90-ish yards. It might be right on 90. That's good math there by me. But right on 90 yards. So 22 carries for 90 yards, taking his outlier away. And it was a thing that it felt like Oregon was ahead of the sticks every single possession, right? We talk about it often in our film sessions is like, hey, when your offense is really rolling, Peyton Manning loves talking about this. He goes, the best offensive series go first down, second down, first down. You don't even get to third down. We've seen bad offenses. A lot of us Ohio State fans are going to watch one tomorrow when we watch the Browns, and they don't get anything on first and second down, and then you're in third and 8+. And when an offense is consistently there, it's impossible to be successful and kind of convert. For Oregon tonight, it felt like they were ahead of the sticks a lot, and that sets up second and manageable where you can take shots. You can double move Denzel Burke and have a 69-yard touchdown. You can do a lot of those things because you're in advantageous situations. And even more so, when you do take those shots and you don't hit on them, you set up third and short, third and manageable, and you have opportunities to convert those situations. So I thought Oregon's offense stayed really ahead of the sticks, and that goes back to Ohio State kind of getting dominated in that front. I talked about it on our pregame show. The biggest key for me on both sides of the football were to dominate the line of scrimmage. Ohio State's offensive line, and we didn't really touch on it before the injuries to Josh Simmons and Tegra Shabola, we're doing a really nice job. When Josh Simmons went down, and I don't right now have an update on that. I'm sure Coach Day is going to speak on it. If he hasn't done it now, I'm sure he will at some point. I just don't have that update for you right now. But he leaves on on a cart. Didn't look great. He kind of was under his own power, but one of those things where he kind of hobbled onto a cart there wasn't awesome. But Ohio State's offensive line did a decent job protecting Will. They weren't able to run the ball, but it wasn't as lopsided as Ohio State's defensive line. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau were, for all intents and purposes, non-existent on the game. I'll get some stats right now, but Jack Sawyer, 2 tackles, no TFLs, no sacks. JT Tuimoloau, 3 tackles, 1 TFL, no sacks. I don't have the pressure numbers in front of me, but it felt like, Dylan Gabriel was back there, standing there. He could have cooked some cookies, done his taxes, take the trash out, and then delivered the football down the field, because there was just all kinds of time, because our front four, and frankly, that's the biggest, in my opinion, on tonight's game, that's the biggest disappointment. That front four and your defensive line is a group that you're so excited about, and frankly, it should be and has been talked about being one of the best groups in the country. And tonight, they just didn't show it. And yeah, I mean, that part was disheartening because when they're getting pushed off the line, that means offensive linemen are getting up to the second level, getting to Cody Simon, getting to Sonny Styles, and making it challenging for your linebackers there. On the backside, I thought, while most of the defense didn't play that great, I thought Cody was flying around and he was playing with his hair on fire. I thought the same could be said for Lathan Ransom. I don't know from like an execution standpoint, without having watched any of the tape, how well they played, but at least it felt like, they were out there playing hard. A lot of the guys were. I'm not saying that the team wasn't, but you could kind of tell that Cody was kind of in the mix. Cody finished the night 10 tackles, 5 solos, 1 pass deflected, or 1 pass defensed. Sonny Styles, 9 tackles, 6 solos, no PBUs, no TFLs, no sacks. But I do remember, and I just remember one huge pressure he had off the edge where, we kind of could see it. The Ohio State kind of brought everybody. It was kind of like one of those like engage 8 situations where they kind of flew down and blitzed a couple cats and kind of got home. So they had to do that. When you can't manufacture a pressure with just 4 guys, you have to start dialing up blitzes and stuff. And that puts your back end, which you thought was pretty solid, puts them in disadvantageous situations, which we saw was taken advantage of tonight. So let's get to that back end. Starting in the safety group, my favorite group on the field, Caleb Downs, another spectacular night, I thought. 8 tackles on the night, 5 solos, 1 TFL, 2 PBUs. And the one that was like really crazy was the 1 pass deflection. Like, he was on a blitz. It just like showed everything that's like great about this 19-year-old as a football player. Like, he's the best athlete on the field. He's also the smartest cat on the field. Realizes he's not getting home and that the quarterback's going to throw it, stops his blitz before engaging with his blocker, then jumps, and while he jumps in the air, deflects it with his left hand, because he's just the freakiest athlete on the turf. And I thought he played another great game. I thought Lathan Ransom was in the mix a lot, obviously without really connecting all the dots on everything. It looked like Lathan played pretty well. Jordan Hancock on the back end, 1 PBU, 3 total tackles, 1 solo. Again, would have to kind of dive into the tape there. But those guys I thought were solid. They were definitely not the issue. The issue I thought was the final group on the field. Davison Igbinosun starting there. Thought he was solid tonight. Had a couple nice plays over the middle. Had probably, I'd say, one of the most impactful plays, and not even plays, maybe impactful sequences when I don't know what was said, but he and Trayshawn Holden got into a little mix-up there, and Trayshawn Holden, the number 1 receiver for the Oregon Ducks, spits in his face, and then just crazy, and I apologize for saying it this way, just like very dumb, very stupid decision to do that. He gets kicked out of the game and really puts Ohio State puts Oregon, in an awesome position, puts Ohio State in a great position, and that happened in the first quarter of the game. So there was a lot of time left there when that all went down. But the other side, Denzel Burke, there's going to have to be a long and hard conversation with Denzel Burke, because just a really, really, really tough night for number 10. And this is a guy that I hesitate to be critical of, because he is Mr. Ohio State, it feels like. He puts everything into this program. He's a leader on this defense. He's a vocal leader on this defense. He's a vocal leader on this team. That was evident not only this season, but last season when they were going through their struggles towards the end of the year and all that stuff. I mean, I really like number 10 as a player and as like a leader of this team. But tonight, just truthfully, was not one of his better nights. It kind of got started with the 69-yard catch on, I forget, whatever, the second or third drive of the game to Evan Stewart, and it didn't end there. It set up Oregon really nicely to I think it was tie the game or maybe take the lead or something. But whatever the situation was, that wasn't great. And then it kind of continued to spiral from there. They certainly, towards the end of the game, were targeting number 10 and trying to get after him. I say this because I think that a game like this is one that'll potentially drive him as the year progresses. That's the best part about this, guys, is that, like, yes, tonight was incredibly disappointing, and it's a game that you really wanted. But at the end of the day, it doesn't frankly matter. Like, Ohio State's still in it. They still have everything they want in front of them. And I think for number 10, he is going to use this tape, use kind of this poor performance, if you will, and have it motivate him going forward to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Because truth be told, Ohio State's goals of this season were not to beat Oregon. They were to go to the national title game and win the national title game. So, yes, the road is now just a little bit harder. There's nowhere to fall back now, but it's still, everything's still in front of him, and it's still going to be in front of Denzel Burke. He'll lick his wounds, he'll stand back up, and he'll get back to it. But that was certainly something that caught my attention. Some key stats for Oregon. We talked about Gabriel's performance through the year. We talked about Jordan James running the football. On the outside, Evan Stewart, spectacular. 7 catches for 149 yards. One score with that long being a 69-yard touchdown. Tez Johnson, we talked about him on our preview show on Thursday, and we saw it evident tonight, exactly what we said. He leads the team in catches by like a bunch. He's like 20 more than the next closest guy, but everything's kind of behind the line of scrimmage. He like doesn't go down the field, so he doesn't have as many yards, or he only has like 100 more yards than everybody else, but he catches the rock. And he had one really cool one on like a bubble screen where he just like snagged it one hand. It was right at the end of the third quarter because he snagged it one hand, and I actually thought he fumbled it, but we never really got clarity on that. Terrence Ferguson. Now, this is a guy Kevin talked about on our Tuesday show or Thursday show. And he's like, yeah, having a tight end will make a difference. And it certainly did tonight. Ferguson ended the game 4 catches for 62 yards, no scores, but really was that difference maker in terms of, hey, he's not going to be the reason that Oregon scores touchdowns, but he forced Ohio State's hand in a lot of scenarios where dictating personnel. I talk about that so much because I truthfully believe that that's so important. One of the areas that we're going to highlight tomorrow in our film session, but it was so critical. And I thought of jumping on and talking about it was because Ohio State really caught the upper hand when they split out G. Scott into the slot. They brought him in because it was going to be heavy personnel. They split him out into the slot, and then he ran a slant route that Will put a perfect throw right on his face mask to move the sticks. It was like 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 12 or something, and it was a really nice gain in completion, and it was all set up because they used an athletic tight end to dictate personnel to get an advantageous matchup. They took advantage of it. So we'll get into that in more detail, but I thought on the flip side, Oregon did a really nice job, and Terrence Ferguson was a big reason for that. Trayshawn Holden, we already talked about him. 1 catch for 32 yards. He was ejected in the first quarter, early in the first quarter, because of spitting on Davis and Igbinosun. Then a couple other guys, Justice Love, 1 catch for 9 yards. Noah Whittington, 2 catch for 8. And then Jordan James out of the backfield, 1 catch for 6 yards. So I thought Oregon's offense was pretty strong. Ohio State's defense, outside of Denzel Burke, they have a lot to figure out. This was a very disappointing game. Yes, a couple big plays. That'll happen. You'll get corrected there. What was really disappointing was Oregon's ability to control the tempo of the game by running the football, something that we haven't seen this Ohio State team compete against. And the really scary part is, and I don't want to go here, but that's been our Achilles heel to this point in the last 3 seasons, right? Like, where we've slipped up against the team up north is when we can't stop the run and we can't generate a pass rush and we have to start blitzing, and then we start playing another team's game. as opposed to playing our game. So thought that was really interesting there from a matchup perspective. All right, some of the unique stuff. Special teams is a third of the football game. If tonight wasn't absolutely evident of that, it's certainly, you got to get your eyes checked because we almost got a touchdown. We almost got a Kansas State touchdown in the Colorado game here, which will be interesting. We'll get into the top 10, top 25, my thoughts there. But thought special teams obviously played a massive role, and it almost cost Oregon the game, right? You missed that extra point. Then you're chasing points all game long. You missed the field goal. So they left probably 5 points on the table there, and you win that game by one. Probably should have been 38-31, 37-31, something in there. But special teams is a third of the football game for a reason. The flip side of that kickoff where, again, situational football. Ohio State gets a personal foul. I forget the details of the personal foul, but it was a 15-yard penalty. That was may have been a face mask, if I remember correctly, but enforced on the kickoff. Really smart by Oregon. And if it, in my opinion, if I was a coach or if I ever get back into coaching, I would totally agree with what Oregon did when they, instead of kicking it through the back of the end zone, they used a squib kick technique to try to pin Ohio State back a little bit. And while doing that, they accidentally kick it off the up man. And when you accidentally kick it off the up man, it bounced straight back to Oregon, and they set themselves up with first down and opportunity to score. Now, that is like just incredibly, incredibly unfortunate for Ohio State. That was one where it was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Like, one of those situations where there's nothing you can do about it. It was, nobody made a mistake. It was just a, kind of a lucky play, if you will. And it cost the Buckeyes pretty significantly in that scenario. So while you kind of laugh at or cough at the thought of special teams being important, it always does kind of rear its ugly head in a lot of situations. So thought that was pretty evident and pretty interesting in a game like this. So it was just kind of all around a disappointing end to the game. But now kind of looking around not only the country, but kind of around the Big Ten. I say all this and saying like this game was Oregon-Ohio State was like all-time instant classic. There was one that I don't know. It happened kind of like this weird witching hour, that 3:30 hour of college football. And Purdue almost pulled off one of the greatest comebacks of all time. They were down 23 points in the fourth quarter and almost get it all the way back. They end up going into overtime against 23 ranked Illinois. That final score was 50-49. Just for fun's sake, Purdue at halftime was down 24-3. They win the third quarter 17-3, and then they win the fourth quarter 23-6. So that back half of the game, they won the second half of the game 40-19. Pretty spectacular stuff. Looks like they went for two to win the game on their opportunity. They didn't get it. So Illinois gets a big win. More importantly, though, in the top 10, let's talk through it all. Texas dominates Oklahoma. Oklahoma's in a bad way. I think that program's in bad shape right now, while Texas is starting to really move a little bit. They looked like a very workmanlike effort in the Red River Shootout, Red River Rivalry, whatever it's called these days. And then you obviously get 2 and 3, Ohio State versus Oregon. Oregon goes 32-31. Then Penn State, man, oh man, did Penn State, James Franklin, Drew Aller. I'm a big Drew Aller fan, Cleveland kid, and always rooting for Drew. But Penn State needs a furious comeback in the fourth quarter and in the second half to go to overtime to force USC to miss a field goal and to escape their 33-30 victory. USC is interesting, man. That's a group that is like competed. It beat LSU in week 1, if you go back a couple weeks, and like it has everything you want. Miller Moss is, I think, a dude in my opinion. But they go to Michigan. They get beat in a weird game there. They get beat today in Penn State. I forget their other loss. It's kind of slipping my mind at the moment. But let's see here. Oh my God, how could I forget? They lose to Minnesota last week. So it's like kind of a huge slip up there. And for Penn State, that would have been such a disappointing loss, especially how the week started with James Franklin kind of whining about like the runway situation, how they had to do a bigger plane because they're going across the country, all sorts of stuff. But Penn State gets a victory there. They stay undefeated. You're going to see a little jump from them. So I think 1 through 3 kind of stays put. I think you go Texas at 1. Oregon's going to stay at 2. And just because you can't outseed Texas right now, in my opinion, yes, it's a great win. And they may do it. That Oregon-Texas may flip-flop. I don't think it's all that important. But Penn State goes to number 3. I think Georgia, Georgia, 41-31 victory over Mississippi State. That Georgia-Alabama situation is an interesting one because Alabama needs a miracle today to escape South Carolina with a victory. They even tried to give it away there at the end with not recovering the onside kick, and USC having that's South Carolina having a chance to win the football game, but they escape. Georgia in kind of a dogfight with Mississippi State. Let's see kind of if I box score watched. Didn't really pull away at the end, but had a good, it was a close game. Both Mississippi State won the second half outright 21-14. But at no point it was really ever in danger. Midway through the third quarter, Georgia took a 34-10 lead. So it was like, hey, they got the job done. So they'll kind of stick around. Tennessee escapes a Florida game that shouldn't have been all that close. They win 23-17 in overtime. Notre Dame gets a nice win tonight. Ole Miss and LSU is happening right now. 1 minute, 48 seconds left. LSU is actually driving. They're on the 39-yard line of Mississippi. Ole Miss going in to try and score there. So if it were me at this moment in time at 11:35 on Saturday night, I think you go Texas 1, Oregon 2, Penn State 3. You're going to go Georgia 4. Ohio State, I presume, would drop to 5. We take them down to number 5. And then let's see. Tennessee will stay at 8. I'm missing number 6. So whoever's at 6, I think Alabama stays at 7. Tennessee stays at 8. And then 9 and 10 don't really flip-flop. Iowa State gets a nice win over West Virginia. So they stay there. I don't think Ohio State drops out very, very far. I think that that's in the top 10, obviously, and stays really in the top 5. So appreciate the question there, Brian, talking about this and seeing how far we'll drop. Let's see here. We got a good one here. Let's see. I just missed it. Oh, brain dead clock management. Rick, thanks for popping in. Brain dead clock management is typical highlight of Ohio State football. I don't know if we were on earlier, Brian, or Rick, excuse me, but we touched on it a little bit. It's just a tough situation, especially what happened. I think that you're going to hear a lot more conversation tomorrow and into Monday about that 12-man on the field. Like, I mean, I think that actually played an incredible advantage to Oregon because they basically traded just 5 yards for 8 seconds of play. And they pretty much double covered Jeremiah and like forced a pass breakup and didn't get penalized that big for it. But just really tough ending, Rick. And I agree with you. Yeah, you want the clock management to be a lot more smooth than what it was. But that's kind of the way it really all kind of shook out. Man, holy cow! I love that everyone's kind of jumping in here. I know that games like this can be really tough, and I use these for sure, kind of as a little get some stuff off the chest here. So appreciate everyone kind of jumping in here. But let's look at this one here from Steve. Too many penalties and mistakes. That was the game. Why would anybody expect a good defense to be good against anyone, against one of the best offenses? Which other team's good defense is also good against top teams? So Steve, appreciate you dropping this comment in. And I can't hardly agree with you. I didn't think the penalties were that big of a concern, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that's just like, hey, fresh off, hey, just watch the game. Haven't really got to look back on all the situations and the penalties and things. But Yeah, I agree. I mean, mistakes were the big thing on defense. It was not necessarily even missed tackles, but potentially missed fits. They were able to run the football kind of at will. Denzel, like we talked about, struggled, biting on double moves, got beat big. And that's the thing, man. It's like, hey, when you get beat and you make a mistake against Marshall or Akron or whomever, maybe it's a completion down the field for 20 yards. But when you make a mistake against a team like Oregon, it's a 60-yard touchdown, or it's a 50-yard gain, or it's a setup and first and goal, or they make you pay, and that's really part of it. Rico, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, what I would push back here just a touch, Rico, is that Penn State was the superior opponent to USC. That said, win the football game. I don't care if you're lining up against the little sister of the poor. I don't care if you're playing John Carroll University. I don't care if you're playing, Alabama or Oregon. That's the opponent in front of you. You had the chance at the end of the football game to go down and win it, and you didn't. You had the ball in your quarterback's hands with an offense that you believe's one of the best in the country, and you weren't able to get it done. Well, didn't believe how loud it was on third down. Jeremy, appreciate you popping it in. Yeah, man, that was one thing that I really for work this past summer, and was like took in the stadium. I'm a football nerd, as you could probably imagine. So anytime I get the chance to go visit a stadium, or don't tell the cops, but potentially sneak into one, didn't get into they did a good job locking this one up, but potentially get a picture of the field or whatnot. I always love to do so, but thought that Oregon Stadium is really cool. If you haven't been out to it, or if you're out there now, you probably don't think it's that neat, but it does have that weird top at the very top where it's kind of wavy. But I was impressed by how loud it was. It only seats 60-ish thousand, maybe 70,000. It's hard to put that into perspective when we go to look at the Horseshoe and there's 110,000 people there, 107,000 people. Like, it's 30,000 less than what Ohio State, the capacity of the Horseshoe is. But I mean, it was loud as heck tonight, and we saw a bunch of false starts, especially early. It's a rowdy bunch, and that stadium, college football environment, by every stretch of by every way you could measure it. So thought that was really cool. But ultimately, a couple of my big takeaways from the football game: Ohio State shot themselves in the foot. They were the better team tonight. They had chances to put the game away, and they didn't do it. They were up big. They needed a stop. They needed the defense to get off the field. Credit to and we just tie Ole Miss up at 23. So it looks like that one's going into overtime. So we're going to get yet another overtime affair. It's pretty darn cool. But I got a good one here. Steve, hear you, man. I hear you. Whatever you got to do. Again, thanks for hanging out tonight. Whatever you got to do to rest your head, rest easy tonight. Sure. But I maybe would push back just a touch on this one, but certainly understand where you're coming from there. But yeah, I mean, I thought that Ohio State had chances to win the game. They didn't do it. They didn't take advantage of their opportunities, and that's only on them. They have only themselves to blame, frankly. But on the flip side, credit to Oregon. Tip your cap to them. They had home field advantage. That place was freaking rocking. Their quarterback played awesome. I thought both quarterbacks were awesome, but they just made the big plays when it was asked of them, and they did a really nice job. That said, I thought the environment was spectacular, and I think that this tonight and maybe Alabama, Georgia, is exhibit one of, hey, keep college football the way that it is for the time being, for going forward. Never go back to the old way, because a loss like this would have disqualified Ohio State almost certainly, right? But now teams are not going to be scared to schedule games like this, and this environment was fantastic. The teams, people who say, I had a buddy text tonight, and shout out to Connor, if you ever hear this, but I had a buddy say this game doesn't mean anything. I'm still watching Guardians highlights, which shout out to the Guards, huge win up in Cleveland. But he was like, yeah, this game doesn't mean anything. And I called BS on him. I'm like, no way. Sure does. These kids are going to compete their butts off, and they did. And both teams wanted it bad, and they went after it to try to get a victory. So the nice part is Oregon gets a nice win Ohio State does get a loss, but their season does not end here. I think this will only make them much, much better. And it's just another testament to the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is very strong, and it is led by these two brands, Oregon and Ohio State. But tonight, an absolute instant classic, and we have so much more coming for you. Maybe not so much tonight. I do got to catch at least a couple Z's here, but we'll be back with you first thing in the morning, probably around 9:30, 10 o'clock, where we can get into a little bit of the film of this. We'll break down some of the key plays, talk through what I believe happened, what I believe maybe the quarterbacks were seeing, maybe what the scheme actually was, and try to make sense of it, and try to show you guys, hey, let's get you into the film room and learn a little bit, because I think that's so much fun. And it's fun for me. But it gets me to allows me to put my coaching hat back on, which I always love to do. So jump back in with us tomorrow morning. But as always, subscribe to our channel. We got a bunch of content like this coming to you post game every week. We got a bunch of pregame stuff on Saturdays, but we also got you covered throughout the week. We do a preview show of the upcoming opponent's offense, their defense. We do a bunch of small, quick game hitters, is what I call them, where we just highlight some of the main topics of the week. So if you're new to the site, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate you jumping in with us tonight, and also following along for those who do. For all of our written content, head over to our other site, si.com/college/Ohio State. I know the boys are buzzing right now. My phone's buzzing off the hook with one over on our written site. So maybe store a couple for the morning coffee. We got a 9:30 Eastern NFL game tomorrow. So get up, get some rereading in, jump in with me at 9:30, 10 o'clock into the film room, and that'll be your precursor before we watch both of our Ohio 1-4 NFL teams tomorrow. But as always, guys, appreciate you jumping in with us, and really appreciate everybody coming in tonight, dropping comments and interacting with me. I love doing this stuff and getting to talk with you guys, so really appreciate it. But the big news of the night: Ohio State falls to the Oregon Ducks 32-31 in the marquee matchup of week number 6 in NCAA football. The Ducks move to 6-0. The Ohio State Buckeyes will come home for a bye week with a 5-1 record, getting ready for a huge stretch after the bye week. They got Nebraska at home, and they head on the road to Happy Valley to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions in a couple weeks. We got you covered on Ohio State Buckeyes on SI, and as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us. 1